The rain came down like God himself was weeping over Magnolia Springs, Louisiana. Loretta Mae Johnson had seen plenty of storms in her 43 years. Hurricanes that bent the cypress trees sideways, flash floods that turned Main Street into a muddy river, and the kind of quiet tempest that lived inside a person's heart and never truly passed. But something about this October evening felt different. The air was thick with electricity, the kind that made the hairs on her arms stand at attention and whispered that change was coming whether she was ready for it or not. She wiped down the counter of Mama Pearl's diner for the third time, watching the rain streak down the windows like tears on weathered glass. The neon sign outside flickered open, casting a pinkish glow across the wet parking lot where only 2 cars remained, her ancient Honda Civic with its rusted fender, and a sleek black Mercedes that looked as out of place in this town as a diamond in a coal mine. "You gonna stare at that car all night or you gonna refill my coffee?" Loretta turned to find old Earl Hutchins holding up his empty mug, his leathery face creased with amusement. Earl had been coming to Mama Pearl's since before Loretta was born, back when her grandmother actually ran the place. Now, at 87, he was as much a fixture of the diner as the cracked vinyl booths and the jukebox that only played songs from before 1975. "Patience never was your strong suit, Earl," Loretta said, grabbing the coffee pot. "You'd think at your age you'd have learned some. At my age I ain't got time for patience. Every cup could be my last." She laughed despite herself, pouring the steaming liquid into his mug. "You've been saying that for 20 years. And one day I'll be right." The bell above the door chimed, and Loretta looked up to see the owner of that Mercedes stepping inside. He was a white man, maybe mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair that was plastered to his forehead from the rain. His suit, probably worth more than Loretta made in 6 months, was soaked through, and he was shivering slightly as water pooled around his expensive leather shoes. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were the pale blue of winter ice, and they held something she recognized immediately: exhaustion. Not the tired kind that came from a long day's work, but the bone-deep weariness of a soul that had been carrying too much for too long. "Welcome to Mama Pearl's," Loretta called out. "Sit anywhere you like. I'll bring you a menu." The man nodded, choosing the booth furthest from the door, sliding in with his back to the wall. Loretta noticed how his eyes swept the room before he sat, checking the exits, counting the occupants. It was the behavior of someone who was either running from something or had spent a lifetime being hunted. She grabbed a menu and a clean towel, walking over to his table. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands as he accepted the towel. "Rough night?" she asked. He looked up at her, and for a moment, something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps at her directness. Then a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You could say that. Well, you came to the right place. Ain't nothing a cup of hot coffee and a slice of Mama Pearl's pecan pie can't fix." She set the menu down in front of him. "I'm Loretta. You holler when you're ready to order." She turned to walk away, but his voice stopped her. "Loretta." He said her name like he was testing it, tasting the syllables. "That's a beautiful name. Old-fashioned. Named after my grandmother. She started this place back in 1962. Loretta gestured around the diner. Wasn't easy, a black woman opening a restaurant in Louisiana back then. But she was stubborn as a mule and twice as determined. Sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. Loretta paused, something in her wanting to linger, to understand the sadness behind this stranger's eyes. "The pecan pie is her recipe. Made it every morning until the day she died. I do my best to honor it." The man's eyes softened. "Then I'll have a slice. And that coffee you mentioned. Coming right up." As Loretta walked back to the counter, she felt Earl's gaze on her. "You know who that is?" he asked, his voice low. "A wet man in need of pie. That's all I need to know." Earl shook his head. "That's Marcus Sullivan. The Marcus Sullivan. His face was all over the news this morning." Loretta frowned, trying to place the name. She didn't watch much television. Between the diner and raising her daughter alone, she barely had time to sleep, let alone keep up with current events. "Should that mean something to me?" "He's the CEO of Sullivan Technologies. Biggest tech company in the South. Man's worth billions." Earl's eyes darted toward the booth. "But that ain't why he was on the news. His wife died last week. Car accident. And now they're saying..." "Saying what?" Earl hesitated, lowering his voice even further. "They're saying maybe it wasn't an accident. Police questioned him this morning. Let him go, but you know how these things work. Once people start talking." Loretta looked back at Marcus Sullivan, at the way his shoulders curved inward as if trying to make himself smaller, at the way his hands wrapped around the water glass she'd set down earlier like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. "That man didn't kill his wife," she said quietly. "How you figure?" "Because I know what grief looks like, Earl. I wore it for 3 years after Jerome passed." She picked up the coffee pot. "That man isn't hiding guilt. He's drowning in sorrow." She poured a cup of coffee and cut a generous slice of pecan pie, placing both on a tray along with a small pitcher of cream and some sugar packets. When she reached his table, Marcus was staring out the window at the rain, his reflection a ghost in the glass. "Here you go," she said, setting everything down. "You want me to warm that up for you? The pie, I mean. Some folks like it heated with a scoop of vanilla ice cream." He turned to look at her, and Loretta saw tears glistening in his eyes. He blinked them back quickly, but not before she caught them. "No, thank you. This is perfect." She should have walked away. Should have left him to his grief and his pie. But something held her there, some instinct honed by years of serving people in their most vulnerable moments. The truckers crying into their hamburgers after finding out their wives had left. The young mothers trying to feed their children with nothing but spare change. The old men eating alone because everyone they loved had already gone. "My husband died 6 years ago," she said softly. "Heart attack. He was only 41. One minute he was laughing at something our daughter said, and the next." She swallowed. "I didn't think I'd survive it. The grief was like drowning. Every time I thought I'd reached the surface, another wave would pull me under." Marcus looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time. "Does it ever stop?" His voice was barely a whisper. "The drowning?" "No," she admitted. "But you learn to swim. You learn that the waves aren't there to destroy you, they're there to remind you that you loved someone enough to feel their absence in every cell of your body. That kind of love doesn't end with death. It just transforms." A tear slipped down Marcus's cheek, and he made no move to wipe it away. "She was my best friend," he said. "Elena. We were married for 32 years. Met in college when I was just a kid with a dream and no money to my name. She believed in me when no one else did. Built that company together even though everyone said I was crazy." His voice cracked. "And now they're saying I killed her. That I wanted her money, her shares in the company. As if any of that meant anything without her." Loretta slid into the booth across from him. It wasn't professional, wasn't proper, but some moments called for humanity over protocol. People are going to say what they're going to say. Can't control their mouths or their minds. But you know the truth. You carry it right here. She touched her heart. And that's all that matters. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "Why are you being kind to me? You don't know me. For all you know, they could be right." Loretta smiled sadly. "Because I've lived long enough to know the difference between a man weighed down by guilt and a man weighed down by grief. You're not carrying a secret, Mr. Sullivan. You're carrying a broken heart. And that's something I understand better than most." Before he could respond, the bell above the door chimed again, this time with a violence that made them both jump. 3 police officers stormed in, their boots heavy on the linoleum, their hands resting on their holsters. Marcus Sullivan? The lead officer was a thick-necked man with a buzz cut and a sneer that seemed permanently etched into his face. His name tag read Deputy Rawlings. Marcus stood slowly, his face draining of color. "Yes. You need to come with us. We have some more questions about your wife's death." "I already answered your questions this morning. I told you everything I know." "Well, we got some new information. And it doesn't look good for you." Rawlings stepped closer, his hand moving toward his cuffs. "Now, we can do this easy or we can do this hard. Your choice." Loretta watched as Marcus's shoulders slumped, watched as he began to raise his hands in surrender, and something inside her snapped. "Hold on just a minute." All eyes turned to her. Old Earl choked on his coffee. The other officer, a younger man who looked barely old enough to shave, shifted uncomfortably. Rawlings' sneer deepened. "This doesn't concern you, ma'am. Step aside. This is my diner, and everything that happens in it concerns me." Loretta stepped between Marcus and the officers, her heart hammering in her chest but her voice steady as steel. "You got a warrant?" A muscle twitched in Rawlings' jaw. "We don't need a warrant to bring someone in for questioning." "Then he's not under arrest?" "Not yet." "Then he doesn't have to go with you. He's a free citizen eating his dinner in peace, and unless you've got paperwork that says otherwise, you can turn around and walk right back out that door." The air in the diner crackled with tension. Earl had gone completely still, his coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. The other officer was looking at Rawlings nervously, clearly out of his depth. Rawlings took a step toward Loretta, close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. "Listen here," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're interfering with police business. That's a crime. And I'd hate to have to arrest you in front of your customers." Loretta didn't flinch. She'd faced down worse than this. Landlords who tried to evict her after Jerome died, bill collectors who called at all hours, a world that told her daily that she wasn't enough. This man with his badge and his bluster didn't scare her. "My name is Loretta Mae Johnson. My grandmother opened this diner in 1962, back when men like you would have burned it down just for existing. She stood her ground then and I'm standing mine now." She lifted her chin. "You want to arrest me? Go ahead. But you better have a good lawyer because I know my rights and I know his. Unless he's under arrest, he stays right where he is." A long moment passed. Then another. Finally, Rawlings stepped back, his face twisted with barely contained rage. "This isn't over, Sullivan. We'll be back. With a warrant." He turned to Loretta, his eyes promising retribution. "And you just made a big mistake." "Wouldn't be my first," Loretta said calmly. "I'm sure it won't be my last." The officers retreated, the doors slamming behind them hard enough to rattle the windows. The diner fell silent, the only sound the rain still pounding against the glass and the whir of the ceiling fan. Loretta let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up with her. "That was," Marcus started, his voice rough with emotion, "the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." She turned to face him, suddenly embarrassed. "It was the right thing. Nothing brave about it. You could have gotten yourself arrested. Or worse." He stepped toward her. "Why did you do it?" Loretta considered the question. Why had she done it? This man was a stranger, a billionaire whose world couldn't be more different from hers. They'd shared 10 minutes of conversation about grief and pie, and yet she'd put herself on the line for him without a second thought. "Because I know what it's like to be judged before you've had a chance to speak," she finally said. "I know what it's like to have people look at you and decide they already know your story. That man Rawlings, he didn't come in here looking for justice. He came in here looking for a conviction. And I won't stand by and watch someone be railroaded, no matter who they are." Marcus stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then, slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "This is my private number. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." Loretta took the card, feeling the expensive weight of it between her fingers. "I don't need your money, Mr. Sullivan. I'm not offering money. I'm offering gratitude. There's a difference." He picked up his jacket from the booth. "How much do I owe you for the coffee and pie?" "On the house." "I can't." "Yes, you can." She gestured toward the door. "Now get out of here before those officers come back with that warrant. Go somewhere safe. Let your lawyers handle this." Marcus nodded, but he hesitated at the door, turning back to look at her one last time. The rain had softened to a gentle mist, and in the neon glow of the sign, he looked almost ethereal. "Loretta?" "Yeah. Thank you. For seeing me. The real me." His voice broke slightly. "It's been a long time since anyone has." Then he was gone, swallowed by the night, leaving nothing but a cold cup of coffee, an untouched slice of pie, and a business card that felt like a promise. Loretta barely slept that night. She tossed and turned in her small bedroom, replaying the confrontation with Rawlings over and over in her mind. Had she done the right thing? Or had she just painted a target on her own back? By the time her alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., she'd already been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sound of her 17-year-old daughter Maya's breathing in the next room. Maya. Everything Loretta did, she did for that girl. Every extra shift, every aching muscle, every sacrifice. Maya was going to graduate next spring with honors, was going to be the first in their family to go to college. She'd already been accepted to 3 schools, including Tulane with a partial scholarship. But partial wasn't full, and Loretta had been working herself to the bone trying to figure out how to make up the difference. The thought of her daughter starting life with crushing student debt kept her up at night almost as much as the memory of Rawlings's threatening glare. She got up, showered, and started her morning routine. By 5 a.m. she was at the diner, turning on the ovens and mixing the batter for biscuits. By 6 o'clock, the coffee was brewing and the first batch of bacon was sizzling on the griddle. By 6:30, the regulars started trickling in. Truck drivers grabbing breakfast before hitting the highway, construction workers loading up on calories before a long day, retirees who came as much for the company as for the food. Old Earl was there at his usual spot by 7 o'clock, his newspaper spread out in front of him. "You're famous?" he said as Loretta refilled his coffee. What are you talking about? He turned the paper around so she could see the headline. Local waitress stands up to police defends billionaire CEO. Loretta's stomach dropped. How? Someone filmed it, posted it on the internet last night. Went viral, whatever that means. Earl shook his head. You're all over the news, Loretta. And so is Marcus Sullivan. Folks are talking about how he was harassed, about how you stood up for him. Some people are saying you're a hero. Others are saying... He trailed off. Saying what? Earl hesitated. Saying you should have minded your own business. Saying that rich white folks don't need black women fighting their battles. Loretta felt a flush of anger rise in her chest. That man was being treated like a criminal without a shred of evidence. His wife just died. If I'd let them drag him off without a word, what kind of person would that make me? I know. I'm just telling you what's out there. Earl folded the paper. You might want to be careful today. Could be some trouble coming your way. Before Loretta could respond, the bell above the door chimed. She looked up, expecting the morning rush, but instead saw a young woman with sharp eyes and a professional blazer stepping inside. Loretta Johnson? The woman approached the counter. I'm Rebecca Chin from CNN. I was hoping to get a statement about what happened last night. I've got nothing to say. Ms. Johnson, the video has over 2 million views. People are calling you a hero. Others are questioning Mr. Sullivan's innocence. This is a national story now, and I don't care if it's got 2 billion views. I'm not interested in being famous. I'm interested in running my diner and taking care of my customers. Loretta picked up a pot of coffee. Now you're welcome to sit down and order some breakfast, but if you're just here to stick a camera in my face, the door's right behind you. Rebecca's expression flickered between frustration and admiration. At least let me leave my card. If you change your mind. I won't. The reporter nodded slowly, placed a business card on the counter and left. But she wasn't the last. Over the next 2 hours, 3 more journalists showed up, along with a producer from a morning talk show and someone who claimed to be from a major podcast network. Loretta turned them all away, but she couldn't turn away the stares, the whispers, the way her regular customers looked at her like she'd suddenly become a different person overnight. By 10 a.m., the diner was buzzing with more activity than she'd seen in years. Some of it was good, curious newcomers ordering food, filling the booths she usually couldn't fill on a weekday morning. But some of it felt wrong. Like the energy in the room was charged with something she couldn't name. And then, just before 11 o'clock, everything changed. A convoy of 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. The vehicles were immaculate, their windows tinted so dark that Loretta couldn't see inside. They parked in perfect formation, like a choreographed dance. The diner went silent. The doors of the lead SUV opened and 2 men in dark suits stepped out. They moved with the precision of former military, their eyes scanning the parking lot before they approached the diner entrance. One of them held the door open. And then Marcus Sullivan walked in. He looked different today. Gone was the soaked, disheveled man from the night before. In his place stood a man who radiated power, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Loretta's car, his silver hair perfectly styled, his bearing confident and commanding. But his eyes were the same. Those winter ice eyes that held more pain than pride. Behind him came a wave of people. Assistants clutching tablets, men in hard hats carrying equipment, women in smart business attire speaking rapidly into phones. They flooded into Mama Pearl's like a well-dressed invasion. Mr. Sullivan, Loretta managed, her voice faint. What's going on? Marcus smiled. A real smile that transformed his face and made him look 10 years younger. I told you to call me Marcus. And what's going on is something I should have done a long time ago. He gestured to a woman beside him, a tall redhead with the air of someone who made things happen. This is Patricia Collins, my chief operations officer. Patricia, this is Loretta Johnson. The woman I told you about. Patricia extended her hand, her grip firm and warm. Ms. Johnson, it's an honor. Mr. Sullivan hasn't stopped talking about you since last night. I don't understand, Loretta said. What is all this? Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. Last night, you did something for me that no one has done in a very long time. You saw me as a human being, not a headline. You defended me when you had no reason to, when it could have cost you everything. He paused. I spent most of the night thinking about how I could repay that kindness. And then I realized, you don't want repayment. You don't want charity. What you want is what everyone wants. To be seen, to be valued, to know that your hard work means something. He turned to the room, raising his voice so everyone could hear. So I'm not going to insult you with a check. Instead, I'm going to do what I do best. I'm going to invest. Loretta felt her heart stop. Invest. Mama Pearl's has been a cornerstone of this community for over 60 years. Your grandmother built something special here, something that serves not just food but connection, comfort, and hope. That's worth more than any tech startup I've ever funded. He smiled. So, with your permission, I'd like to help you take this place into its next chapter. New equipment. Renovations. A training program for local young people who want to learn the restaurant business. And a full scholarship fund in your grandmother's name for students in Magnolia Springs who want to pursue higher education. The diner erupted in gasps and murmurs. Loretta felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Mr. Sullivan, Marcus, this is too much. I can't accept. You can, he interrupted gently. And you will. Because this isn't about me saving you, Loretta. This is about me finally doing something meaningful with the resources I've been given. For too long, I've been so focused on building an empire that I forgot why I started building in the first place. Elena used to remind me. She'd say, "What's the point of all this money if we can't use it to make someone's life better?" His voice caught, and Loretta saw the grief flash across his face, there and gone in an instant but unmistakable. This is for her, he continued. And it's for you. And it's for every person who walks through those doors looking for a warm meal and a kind word. He extended his hand. So what do you say? Partners? Loretta looked at his hand, then at the room full of strangers who had suddenly become very interested in her answer. She saw old Earl giving her a thumbs up, his eyes suspiciously bright. She thought of Maya, of the scholarship money she'd been desperately trying to scrape together. She thought of her grandmother who had built this place brick by brick, dream by dream. And she took his hand. Partners, she said. The room burst into applause. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. True to his word, Marcus Sullivan didn't just throw money at Mama Pearl's and disappear. He was there, in person almost every day, reviewing renovation plans, meeting with contractors, sitting in the same booth where he'd first broken down and talking to Loretta about everything from business strategy to his favorite childhood memories. The construction crew worked efficiently, transforming the diner without stripping away its soul. They replaced the aging kitchen equipment with state-of-the-art appliances, but kept the original counter, the one Mama Pearl had wiped down thousands of times. They installed new booths with modern cushioning, but upholstered them in the same shade of red vinyl that had been there since 1962. They updated the lighting but left the vintage neon sign in the window, just rewiring it so it no longer flickered. But the most remarkable change wasn't physical. It was the people. Word of what Marcus Sullivan was doing spread quickly, and suddenly Mama Pearl's was more than a diner, it was a symbol. People drove from towns 50 miles away just to see the place where a waitress had stood up to power, and power had responded not with retaliation, but with respect. Food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. Social media influencers posted photos of the pecan pie. A travel magazine named Mama Pearl's one of the 10 hidden gems of the American South. And through it all, the investigation into Elena Sullivan's death continued. Loretta watched it unfold in the news, watched the talking heads debate Marcus's guilt or innocence, watched Deputy Rawlings give smug interviews about pursuing all leads. But she also watched as, one by one, the accusations began to unravel. It was Patricia Collins who came to the diner one morning in late November with the news. They found the real culprit, she said, sliding into the booth across from Loretta. A man named Vincent Cross. He was Elena's former business partner. She'd cut him out of a real estate deal years ago, and he never got over it. He'd been stalking her for months, tampered with her car. Made it look like an accident. Loretta felt a rush of relief so powerful it left her dizzy. Does Marcus know? He's at the police station now. Cross confessed everything. The charges against Marcus are being dropped. It's over. Thank God. Loretta pressed a hand to her chest. That poor man. Everything he's been through. Patricia nodded, her expression thoughtful. You know, I've worked for Marcus for 15 years. I've seen him in boardrooms, in negotiations, in high-pressure situations that would break most people. But I've never seen him as open as he's been these past few weeks. Whatever you did that night, it changed something in him. I didn't do anything special. I just treated him like a human being. And you'd be amazed how rare that is when you're in his position. Patricia stood. He's going to want to see you. When he gets back, I mean. I just wanted you to hear it from us before it hit the news. By evening, the media frenzy had reached a fever pitch. Reporters swarmed Magnolia Springs, cameras pointed at the police station, at the courthouse, at Mama Pearl's diner. Loretta kept the doors open, serving coffee and pie to anyone who needed it, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in the chaos. Marcus arrived just after sunset, slipping in through the back door to avoid the cameras. He looked exhausted but lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted from his shoulders. "It's over," he said, sinking into his usual booth. "They arrested him. It's really over." Loretta brought him a cup of coffee without being asked. "I heard. Patricia told me this morning. She said you seemed relieved." "Of course I was relieved. You've been accused of murdering your own wife. What kind of person wouldn't be relieved to hear you're innocent?" Marcus smiled, but there was a sadness in it. "You'd be surprised. A lot of people seemed disappointed when the truth came out. They wanted the story, billionaire kills wife, gets his comeuppance. It's neater that way. More satisfying. People like easy answers." Loretta sat down across from him. "Real life is messier than that." "It is." He wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. "Loretta, I need to tell you something. Something I probably should have told you from the beginning." She waited. "The night I walked into this diner, I wasn't just running from the police. I was running from myself." He looked up at her, his blue eyes filled with a vulnerability she'd only glimpsed before. "Elena's death, it broke something in me. But it also forced me to confront things I'd been avoiding for years. The way I'd let my work consume me. The friendships I'd neglected. The prejudices I'd ignored because they didn't affect me directly." "Prejudices?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I grew up wealthy. White. Privileged in every way a person can be privileged. And I told myself I was a good person because I didn't say racist things, didn't discriminate in my business practices, donated to the right causes. But I never actually saw it, you know? The everyday reality of what people like you face." He leaned forward. "That night, when Rawlings came in, I was ready to go with him. Ready to be humiliated, to be paraded in front of cameras, to have my reputation destroyed. And I thought, this is the first time I've ever felt what it's like to be presumed guilty. To be treated like a criminal before any evidence has been presented. And it broke me." His voice cracked. "But for you, that's not a one-time experience, is it? It's every day. Every traffic stop. Every store you walk into. Every time someone looks at you and decides they already know who you are." Loretta was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "I was 16 the first time I got followed in a store," she said. "Just wanted to buy a birthday present for my mama. Security guard tailed me the whole time like I was going to stuff something in my pocket any second. I remember the shame I felt even though I hadn't done anything wrong. The anger that came after." She met his eyes. "And yeah, it never stopped. You learn to live with it but you never get used to it." "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I'm sorry for every time someone made you feel less than. For every door that was closed, every opportunity that was denied, every microaggression that you had to swallow and smile through. I can't fix the past, but I can damn well do better in the future. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that you changed more than just my circumstances that night. You changed my perspective. You made me want to be the kind of person who doesn't just avoid harm but actively does good. The kind of person Elena always believed I could be." He reached across the table and took her hand. "The scholarship fund, the training program, the community initiatives we've been planning, I want them to be more than just gestures. I want them to be the beginning of real change. And I want you to help me lead it." Loretta stared at him, stunned. "Lead it? Marcus, I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about running foundations or—" "You know people," he interrupted. "You know this community. You know what it needs, what it struggles with, what dreams it holds. I can provide resources but I can't provide that. Only you can." He squeezed her hand. "Please, Loretta. Do this with me. Not as my employee or my charity case but as my partner. My equal." Loretta looked around the diner, at the new paint on the walls, at the bustling kitchen where 2 young cooks she'd recently hired were learning the ropes, at old Earl dozing in his booth with a fresh cup of coffee beside him. She thought about Maya, who'd been talking nonstop about the scholarship fund, about the younger kids in town who might finally have a path forward. And she thought about her grandmother, who'd opened these doors 60 years ago with nothing but faith and determination. "Okay," she said. "Let's change some lives." The Mama Pearl Foundation was officially launched on January 15th, the anniversary of Mama Pearl's opening day. The ceremony was held in the diner's parking lot, which had been transformed into a winter wonderland with twinkling lights, heated tents, and tables laden with food from local vendors. Half the town had turned out, along with journalists, local politicians, and even a few celebrities who'd caught wind of the heartwarming story and wanted to be part of it. Loretta stood at the makeshift podium, her knees shaking beneath her best dress. She'd never been good at public speaking, had spent her whole life more comfortable in the background than the spotlight. But when she looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people she'd known her whole life, at the hopeful eyes of the young people who would benefit from the Foundation's programs, the words came easier than she'd expected. "My grandmother used to say that a single act of kindness can change the world," Loretta began. "I never really believed her. I figured it was just something old folks said to make themselves feel better about not being able to fix everything. But then one rainy night a stranger walked into my diner. He was hurting. He was scared. And I did what my grandmother would have done. I saw him. Not his money, not his reputation, not his problems. Just him." She paused, glancing at Marcus, who stood at the edge of the crowd with tears in his eyes. That simple act of kindness didn't change the world. But it changed our world. It reminded both of us what matters most: connection, compassion, community. And it showed me that no act of kindness is ever wasted, even when you can't see where it might lead. She turned to address the young people gathered near the front. To the students who'll receive scholarships, to the workers who'll learn new skills, to the dreamers who've been told their dreams are too big, this foundation is for you. Not because you need saving, but because you deserve the same opportunities as anyone else. And we're going to make sure you get them. The applause was deafening. Over the following months, the foundation grew faster than anyone had anticipated. Marcus hired a team of professionals to handle the administrative work, but Loretta remained at the heart of every decision. She hand-selected the first group of scholarship recipients, choosing students who showed not just academic promise but strength of character, the kind of quiet resilience she recognized in herself. She worked with local businesses to create apprenticeship programs, connecting young people with mentors who could teach them trades and skills. She established a food bank in partnership with Mama Pearls, using the diner's commercial kitchen to prepare meals for families in need. But success brought challenges. The first signs of trouble came in the form of anonymous letters. Hateful, vitriolic messages calling Loretta an uppity black woman who didn't know her place. Accusing her of being a gold digger, of manipulating Marcus Sullivan for his money, of forgetting where she came from. Loretta threw the first few letters away without responding. But they kept coming and they got worse. Someone spray-painted a slur on the diner's back wall. Someone else left a dead animal on the doorstep. And then one night someone threw a brick through the front window. Maya was inside when it happened. Loretta got the call at 10 p.m., while she was at home reviewing foundation paperwork. She broke every speed limit getting to the diner, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Maya was unharmed, thank God. She'd been in the back office doing homework when the brick came through, nowhere near the shattered window. But she was shaking, her face pale with shock, and when Loretta wrapped her arms around her daughter, she felt the tremors running through Maya's body like aftershocks. Who would do this? Maya whispered. What did we ever do to them? Loretta had no answer. She held her daughter tighter and fought back tears. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, having been alerted by his security team who monitored the diner's cameras. He took one look at the shattered window, at the brick lying in a pool of glass on the floor, and his expression hardened into something Loretta had never seen before. This stops now, he said. Within 48 hours, he'd hired a private security firm to protect the diner and Loretta's home. He brought in investigators to track down the source of the threatening letters. He went on national television and delivered a blistering statement condemning the harassment and announcing a reward for information leading to the arrest of those responsible. But it was what he did quietly, away from the cameras, that meant the most. He sat with Maya for hours, listening to her fears, answering her questions, telling her about the times he'd faced opposition and how he'd found the strength to keep going. He arranged for her to visit colleges with his own daughter, a young woman named Celeste who was majoring in social justice at Georgetown. He became, in the months that followed, something like family. The investigators eventually traced the harassment to a small group of locals led by none other than Deputy Rawlings's brother-in-law, a man named Carl Tate who'd never forgiven Loretta for embarrassing his relative. The men were arrested, and though the charges were relatively minor, vandalism, harassment, the public exposure destroyed their reputations and sent a clear message to anyone else who might have been thinking of following in their footsteps. But the incident changed something in Loretta. She'd always known that the world could be cruel, that there were people who would hate her simply for existing, for daring to rise above her station. But facing it head-on, seeing her daughter caught in the crossfire, that hardened a part of her that had always remained soft. "I won't be intimidated," she told Marcus one evening, as they sat in the newly repaired diner after closing. I won't let them shrink me. My grandmother didn't, and neither will I. No one's asking you to. Marcus sipped his coffee. But I want you to know, whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. That's what partnership means. Loretta looked at him. This man who'd walked into her diner as a stranger and become, somehow, one of the most important people in her life. Not a savior. Not a benefactor. A partner. I know, she said. And I'm grateful for that. More grateful than I can say. 2 years later, Loretta stood on the stage of the Magnolia Springs Community Center, looking out at an audience of over 1,000 people. The annual Mama Pearl Foundation Gala had become the most anticipated event in the region, drawing attendees from across the country, philanthropists, celebrities, politicians, and ordinary people who'd been touched by the foundation's work. Tonight's theme was Roots and Wings, celebrating both the heritage that grounded them and the dreams that lifted them up. In the 2 years since the foundation's launch, they'd awarded 147 college scholarships, trained over 500 young people in various trades, served more than 200,000 meals to families in need, and built a community center that offered everything from GED classes to mental health counseling. Mama Pearl's Diner had become a model for social enterprise, generating enough profit to fund its own outreach programs while remaining true to its humble roots. But tonight was special for another reason. Before we continue with our program, Loretta said into the microphone, I want to bring up someone who has been the driving force behind everything we've accomplished. Someone who taught me that true leadership isn't about being in charge, it's about lifting others up. Please welcome the first recipient of the Mama Pearl Foundation Leadership Award, my daughter, Maya Johnson. The audience erupted in applause as Maya walked onto the stage. At 19, she'd grown into a remarkable young woman, poised, intelligent, passionate about social justice. She'd graduated high school as valedictorian and was now in her second year at Tulane, double majoring in public policy and business, already making plans to expand the foundation's work to other communities. Maya accepted the award, a small bronze sculpture of hands lifting a rising sun, with tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say, Maya began, her voice shaking. When I was a little girl, I used to watch my mother work double shifts just to keep the lights on. I used to see her come home exhausted, her feet aching, her hands rough from washing dishes. And even then, even when she had nothing left to give, she'd find a way to give more. To me. To our neighbors. To anyone who needed it. She turned to look at Loretta. Mama, you taught me that kindness isn't just about big gestures. It's about the small moments, a warm smile, a listening ear, a slice of pie offered without being asked. You taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's standing up anyway. And you taught me that no matter where you come from, no matter what obstacles you face, you have the power to change lives, including your own. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. This foundation, Maya continued, isn't just about scholarships and job training. It's about showing people that they matter, that someone sees them, that their dreams are valid and worth pursuing. She held up the award. I accept this not for myself, but for every person who's ever been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. You are. And we're going to keep proving it, every single day. The applause was thunderous. Loretta pulled her daughter into an embrace, both of them crying, neither caring who saw. After the ceremony, after the speeches and the dancing and the schmoozing with donors, Loretta slipped outside for some air. She found Marcus on the terrace looking up at the stars. Quite a night, he said as she joined him. Quite a journey, she replied. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. You know, Marcus said eventually, I never told you what happened after that first night. After I left the diner. You don't have to. I want to. He turned to face her. I drove for hours. No destination in mind. Just drove with your words ringing in my ears. About grief transforming. About learning to swim in the waves. And somewhere around midnight I pulled over to the side of the road and I broke. Completely. Everything I'd been holding in since Elena died came pouring out. I screamed. I cried. I cursed God and the universe and myself. His voice softened. And when it was over, when I had nothing left, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not yet. But acceptance. Like you said, the waves weren't there to destroy me. They were there to remind me what I'd lost and by extension what I'd had. And that was worth drowning for. Loretta felt tears prickling at her eyes again. The next morning, Marcus continued, I woke up with a purpose for the first time since Elena's accident. I knew I had to do something meaningful. Something she would have been proud of. And then I remembered you, This woman who barely knew me but defended me like I was family. This woman who saw a grieving man, not a billionaire or a suspect. And I thought, if there are still people like that in the world, then maybe the world is worth fighting for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm not proposing, he said quickly, seeing the alarm on her face. I know we're not. This isn't that. Then what is it? He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring, set with a small diamond that caught the starlight. It was Elena's grandmother's ring. She wore it every day of our marriage. After she died, I couldn't bear to look at it. But lately I've been thinking about what it represents. Not loss but love. Not ending but continuation. He held the box out to her. I want you to have it. Not as a gift but as a symbol. A reminder that love doesn't end with death. That the people we've lost live on through the kindness we show others. Loretta stared at the ring, her heart full to bursting. Marcus, I can't. You can. Elena would have loved you. She would have loved everything you've done, everything you've become. And I know she would want you to have this. Slowly, reverently, Loretta took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. No, Loretta. Marcus smiled, his eyes glistening. Thank you. For saving my life when I didn't even know I needed saving. For showing me what true strength looks like. And for giving me a purpose when I thought I'd lost mine forever. They embraced then, two people from different worlds who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had built something beautiful together. 10 years after that rainy night when Marcus Sullivan walked into Mama Pearl's diner, Loretta stood on the steps of a brand new building in downtown Magnolia Springs, the Elena Sullivan Memorial Center for Social Justice. The center was the crown jewel of the Mama Pearl Foundation's work, a state-of-the-art facility offering legal aid, educational programs, community organizing resources, and mental health services to underserved populations throughout Louisiana. It had taken 5 years to plan and 3 years to build, but the result was everything they'd hoped for and more. Marcus stood beside her, grayer now, a little slower in his movements, but with the same sharp mind and kind heart. The cancer diagnosis had come 3 years ago, and though he'd fought hard, multiple surgeries, experimental treatments, months of chemotherapy, they all knew his time was limited. But today wasn't a day for sorrow. Today was a day for celebration. Are you ready? Loretta asked. Marcus nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. Let's do this. Together they cut the ribbon and the crowd, hundreds of community members, foundation staff, local officials and journalists, burst into applause. The doors opened and people streamed inside, marveling at the light-filled atrium, the state-of-the-art classrooms, the quiet counseling rooms designed for privacy and healing. Later that evening, after the speeches and the tours and the countless photos, Loretta found Maya in the building's main hall, standing in front of a large portrait of 3 women, Mama Pearl, Loretta, and Elena Sullivan, depicted side by side as equals, as pioneers. It's beautiful, Maya said. The artist really captured Grandma's spirit. She would have loved this, Loretta agreed. All of it. The building, the programs, the people. She always said the most powerful thing in the world was a room full of people who believe in something together. Maya turned to her mother. I've been thinking, after I finish my doctorate I want to come back. Full time. Take over the foundation, keep building on what you and Marcus have created. Loretta felt tears spring to her eyes. Baby, you don't have to. I want to, Mama. This is my legacy too. Everything you've done, everything you've sacrificed, it's in my blood. And I want to make sure it continues. For Grandma. For Elena. For every person who walks through those doors looking for hope. They embraced, mother and daughter, past and future intertwined. Marcus passed away 6 months later, peacefully in his sleep, with Loretta holding one hand and Celeste holding the other. His funeral was attended by thousands, world leaders, business titans, celebrities, but the most moving tribute came from the people of Magnolia Springs, who lined the streets with candles and signs that read, "Thank you for seeing us." In his will, Marcus left the bulk of his fortune to the Mama Pearl Foundation, ensuring that its work would continue for generations. But he left Loretta something more personal, a handwritten letter found in his desk drawer, dated the day after she defended him in the diner. Dear Loretta, I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to give you this letter. I'm writing it mostly for myself, to capture something I don't want to forget. Last night, a stranger showed me more kindness than I've experienced in years. She didn't know who I was, didn't want anything from me. She simply saw a person in pain and chose to stand beside him. In a world that often feels cold and transactional, she reminded me that warmth still exists. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll be cleared of these accusations, if I'll find a way to live with my grief, if I'll ever feel whole again. But I know this. Whatever comes next, I will carry the memory of her courage with me. She taught me that standing up for what's right isn't about being unafraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. It's about recognizing that every person deserves dignity, regardless of their circumstances. It's about understanding that the small moments, a cup of coffee, a slice of pie, a hand extended in friendship, can change the entire trajectory of a life. If I'm lucky enough to know her for years to come, I hope to become worthy of the faith she showed in me that night. And if our paths diverge, I hope she knows, somehow, that she saved a broken man simply by being herself. With eternal gratitude, Marcus. Loretta read the letter at his memorial service, her voice breaking but strong. And when she finished, she looked out at the sea of faces, black and white, rich and poor, young and old, all united by the belief that kindness matters, and she smiled. Marcus once asked me why I defended him that night, she said. And I told him it was because I knew what it was like to be judged before you've had a chance to speak. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. She paused, gathering herself. The whole truth is simpler than that. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Not the easy thing, not the safe thing, not the thing that made sense for my situation. Just the right thing. And that's a lesson I learned from my grandmother, who opened a diner in 1962 Louisiana with nothing but determination and faith. She taught me that we don't always get to choose our circumstances, but we always get to choose our character. We choose every single day whether to close our hearts or open them, whether to look away or look deeper, whether to accept the world as it is or fight for the world as it could be. She looked up at the sky, at the sunlight breaking through the clouds. Marcus Sullivan was a billionaire. He was powerful, influential, admired. But when he walked into my diner that rainy night, he was just a person. A person who needed someone to see him, to stand beside him, to remind him that he wasn't alone. And I'm so glad I did. Because he spent the rest of his life making sure others felt that same sense of belonging. She stepped back from the microphone, and the crowd rose to their feet, applause and tears mingling in a wave of shared grief and gratitude. Maya slipped her hand into her mother's, and together they faced the future. A future built on the foundation of a single act of kindness, multiplied 1,000-fold.